Good to see you again, guys. Andrew with 18. We're on the lake. This is a lake I haven't fished in 2 years. At one time, this lake was, considered a top lake in the state, and it was even mentioned in kind of the top 100 in the country. It suffered majorly from a few years of winter kill, and then poor spring conditions, I guess, for breeding, if you will, spawning, and so it really suffered it and went down majorly. It has smallmouth and largemouth, has some very large pike and muskie, so we'll see. Again, I haven't fished it in quite some time. Hopefully this doesn't turn into a finesse fishing video, at least for my sake. For you guys, maybe that's what you want, but for my sake today, I'm kind of hoping it doesn't turn into a finesse fishing video, but we'll see what happens. We pulled up on a main lake point, coming out of a spawning pocket, so just trying to get some idea of where these fish are at, and let's get after it. All right, guys, first fish of the day. Don't know quite what I have yet. That jump makes me think of smallmouth, but we'll see in just a minute. Yep, smallmouth. Let's see if we can get him in the book without losing him here. Amazing when you stick your hand in the water and it's actually warm to the touch. Quite remarkable. Oh. Don't I hate that? Oh my goodness. Can't hold on to him this morning. Gotta get with the program. All right, decent little smallmouth, not a giant, but something. Second fish, largemouth, not a giant, but it's fish. Whew, well, he wasn't coming off. All right, there we go. Just a skinny one. He's been caught before, you can see that right there. So again, beautiful thing about catch and release. Here we are catching them again. So the first one was on a walking bait, Strike King. It was like a spook style bait, and this one's on the whopper plopper. We missed one on a walking bait, and we hooked up to one and lost him on the whopper plopper, and we've just moved in a little bit. It seems like, and I don't have a reason why, maybe because smallmouth are more nomadic and they roam a lot more and push, they work as a team and push a lot more, but it seems like typically I catch smallmouth off the point, so they're relating to the point. This is a main lake point. They're relating to the point, or a rock pile that's happened on a rock pile, a sunken island or something. They're relating to it, but they're not on it. They're usually off of it some distance, or maybe I'll catch a few small ones up on the actual point. But if I want to catch bigger ones, you have to move off just a little bit. I had on a lake, I was catching maybe pound and a half smallmouth right up on the point. So I backed way off and got in about, gosh, I don't know, 20 to 25 feet of water, and all of a sudden 3-4 pound smallmouth, that's where they were. And here we caught the smallmouth off the point. That was a largemouth right on the point, right in the rocks. I mean, probably a foot of water or less. So it seems like that is somewhat consistent. I'm not saying that that's the way it is everywhere all the time, but it seems pretty consistent for me. that the smallmouth are off, or at least the bigger ones, and often the largemouth are closer to, you know, a specific piece of cover. Again, maybe it'll be a little different on your lake, but something to at least think about. And even in schools of fish, I found that to be true as well, whether it's bass or even crappie or something else, white perch, whatever it is, a big schooling fish. I found that I catch a whole bunch right in the center of the school. You can see them on your graphs, but if I want a really, really big one, I move just to the outskirts of that school, and it seems like the big ones are somewhere right around the out edges or just off a little bit, and I don't know why that is. I have theories. Maybe it's that they know not to work too hard, so they let the school, you know, bust up bait and whatever, and then the loose ones that just are wounded and kind of floundering, they go out and pick them off and expend very little energy for how much they're getting. So I don't know, I have theories, but I'm not saying that I know exactly. I'm not a biologist by any means, so I have theories, but that's all it is, and I've just seen it play out consistently enough I know to try it, and it works pretty consistently. All right, let's keep going. Into another one. There we go. It's a little better one. We've had to work pretty hard to get it. There we go. Got something stuck in its belly. Something big. All right, put it back. All right, and that was on the jackhammer, the chatterbait jackhammer there. See if we can catch another one. Total, I guess I should give you a little bit of what happened. So we have hit a few points. After that one point, we haven't, let's see, we got a bite on another point, but we didn't land it. It was on a buzz bait. And then I always like finding places where I could maybe work a frog or flip some heavy grass. And this lake had a teeny little creek that led back to this little pond. It's not big at all, but kind of this little offshoot of the main lake. So I managed to get the boat back in here. Some of the places I was pushing weeds to get through, and there was a little bit of a beaver dam that was kind of falling apart, so we bumped the bottom, but I was just using the trolling motor, so we managed to get back in here. I was really hoping for a few more fish. We did catch that one, but I was hoping for a few more. We'll see if we catch a couple more, but we've kind of, you know, mingled around this whole thing already, so we'll probably head back out here in a little bit. You guys know I love Audible. I'm always listening to a book. I try when I can to shut it off. I've got my speaker up here in the front, and I try to shut it off before I turn the camera on. But I was just thinking, I was listening to a book for the second time. It's called Fortitude. It was written by a Navy SEAL. What an awesome book that is. Just a terrific book. If you're in the market for just a good book, that's a good one. Anyway, let's get back after the fishing. Oh, we got a pike, I think. Yeah, that's what it is. See if we can land it. We got it on a crankbait out here. There's a massive bay back behind us, and then there were two kind of pinch points going into it, and then there's a rock pile, hump right out in front of us, and this thing was sitting on that hump. Let's see if we can get him. Alright, there we go. Just a fatty. Alrighty then. Yep, we'll eat that one. Alright, let's see what else we can catch here. Okay guys, just wanted to share the big fish of the day with you. That is a Mike Iaconelli giant. I mean, look at that. Look at that bass. Look at that giant. Anyway, we caught one more on a crankbait, and I missed it from the video. It was a lot bigger than this, but not a big fish. We're still out here on the hump, and I've slowed down with a worm since I know there are a couple fish here. I've slowed down, and looks like I gotta replace that one, and just trying to catch a couple more. I don't know if it'll work, you know, catching anything that we really want to catch, but we're going to try it for a little bit longer and then get moving. All right, guys. We caught one more Mike Iaconelli giant, and then we've caught this one. Not a giant by any means, but still really glad to have him. I think we're going to want to... Ooh, hey, we got it out. Good enough. All right, well, there we go. One more. That does bring me to a useful point. It does sometimes pay to slow down. We knew there were some fish here. We caught one on a crankbait. We actually caught one of the wrong species, but we caught one on a crankbait, and I think we caught one more on a crankbait. But anyway, and then I said, boy, you know, we're having a hard time getting them with a crankbait, but we knew something was here. So we've slowed down with a worm, and we have caught quite a few extra. Some are a little smaller than we want, but we've caught quite a few extra fish by slowing down. And so just something to pay attention to. I'm going to put a new worm on, retie actually. I get a little bit, you know, gnarls from being in the rocks, and we're going to get back at it. Hey, as I was rigging this up, I just retied, but as I was rigging it up, I'm guessing I've talked about this before, but not 100% sure, so I figured I'd show you. This is my favorite shaky head. I have just latched right onto these. This is the Scott Canterbury. You can see I've hit the rocks a lot, but the Scott Canterbury shaky head, it's a 1/4 ounce. I don't think it comes in a whole bunch of sizes. I think 1/4 ounce is as big as it comes, and that's the one that I use most of the time. I will use a 3/8 ounce head sometimes, or bigger, to float really big worms, but this is probably the most common worm in the world, the Zoom finesse trick worm, and that's just like a morning dawn type of color. Anyway, I typically go very natural, green pumpkin, you know, something like that, or like this, or so very natural or dark. And so this would be on the natural side of it. And so let me just show you. So all I do, I bite off just a teeny bit of the head. I already did that. And then I'll just push it, just push a little bit, and then start turning and working it up to where it is seated nice and tight on that head. If you can see that, I mean, it is seated nice and tight. And then I'm just gonna, got the line wrapped around there. I'm gonna look at it and say, okay, let's see, hopefully you can see that okay. Yep, that's where it's gonna be. That's where the hook's gonna be. So I'm gonna come back here, come all the way through, and just skin hook it just a little bit. And it's fairly straight in line. If you were looking at that, that's what you're looking for. It's got a teeny little kink right there, but fairly straight in line when you're working it on the bottom. That's it. That's my shaky head setup, and boy, I catch a ton of fish on it, and some pretty decent sized ones, but more of a numbers deal than giant fish. You can catch giant fish on it, but I'm usually going on a tough day looking for some numbers, or just to get a bite. All right. Let's go to it. Let's do it. Hooked into what seems like a better fish. I think he just got stuck in the weeds there. I don't know if it's a bass or a pike. That's the problem. Yeah, it's a bass. Ooh, that would be great. That would be great. Let's see here. Okay, not much bigger. He was stuck in the weeds. Look at this. He came up with salad, but it sure felt good. again, I was working a crankbait, nothing, and I pounded through that weed clump. Nothing, nothing, nothing. Went to the worm and immediately caught that fish. So sometimes it pays to slow down. Yep, we just caught another one. There seems to be a spot right there that some fish are gathered up. It's like it must like kind of go over a rock. You can kind of feel it grab, and then sometimes they just pick it up and take it. There we go. All right. Come on. Oh. All right. Feels like a better one. Oh, here we go. See if we can get this one in the boat. This might not be a bass. I don't know. This might be a bite. Yeah, it's making a run. Feels like a bite. Grass. It might be a bass. This might be what we're looking for. Yeah, it's a bass one. There we go. That's a little better. Whew. There we go. Now we're talking grass, so that definitely adds to the resistance, but that's not a bad fish for today. I'll take it on the worm. That's 3 in that same spot, and we got a couple other bites. Just light, but we got a couple other bites. All right. Now we're getting somewhere. How they can all be in one little spot. Just hooked into another small one. I made a teeny change, and I think it made a difference. Doesn't mean that I'm going to catch a big one from doing it, but I swapped to a Ned head. Well, wow, he really mangled that. The head's buried in the plastic, but that being said, not an impressive fish, but we did catch one more when they stopped biting. So again, if it was a big fish, I'd be really, really thrilled. Not quite as excited, obviously, where it's a baby, but the principle still remains the same. And I think it's worth noting, swapping baits does sometimes get you that extra bite. So I'm going to put a new one of these worms on and see if we can catch a couple more. Okay, we've got another one on the Ned head. Feels like a little better. It's hard to tell yet, though. Not much better, but a little better than the last one. Yep, definitely better. Okay. That never even hit the bottom. I casted it out. I now seems like the exact spot that I was catching them has kind of dried up, but I'm now kind of just a little bit around the area, and that just never hit the bottom. It was just gone. The line, the line should have hit the bottom by now, and it hadn't, and it kept moving, so I reeled down. Yep, there was something there, something on. It pays to watch your line. Fish right here. Strip and drag pretty easily. There's a weed patch down there, and they always go for that weed patch. They go straight to the bottom of the weed patch. As soon as they see it, it's like they know. I can feel the line busting through it. And I've only got 12-pound fluorocarbon, so it's not like I got giant line. Ooh, come here, big girl. I think this is a better fish. Oh man. Jeez. Look at that. On the Ned head. That is ridiculous. I don't know what to say other than I'm glad I swapped. Jeez, look at that fish. That is a good one. And on this lake, it's a especially good one. Right now. Oh man, look at that. Look at that. That is a beautiful fish on just a teeny little Ned head. Wow. Alright, I'm going to put it on the scale real quick and just double check the weight. Okay guys, best fish of the day. Beautiful. We'll get her back. Let her get to it. On the Ned head, that teeny little Ned. Just keep picking them off. This feels like another pretty small one, but not upset to have them at any. I mean, oh, smallmouth too. It is small, but it's a smallmouth, so that's kind of handy. Kind of neat. Just keep picking them off. We just move forward maybe, I don't know, 25 yards or so, and just keep kind of fan casting out in front of us. This seems to be a key spot, and it makes sense. We caught a few on this rock hump, you know, today, but this little stretch seems to be the key spot. Obviously, huge spawning pocket back here, all a shallow bay, and it's just I fish both points on either side coming out and nothing, but then there's a huge kind of rock clump just outside the spawning bay. And that seems to be the key spot where they've all come off to this rock clump. And for some reason, right on this stretch seems to be the most key, because I've kind of fished my way around it. Caught a few fish, but this stretch seems to be the most profitable. Alright, just hooked into one with the square bill. We've moved. There was a boat that kept crowding us, and so I just finally moved off the spot, and so we've you know, moved down to the far north end of the lake, and there's a very large point that sticks out right here, and it kind of goes into spawning pockets on both sides. So I'm just fishing kind of the front side of the point, and then I'll probably follow it back. That pocket seems like it goes into deeper water faster, and so I'll probably follow that pocket in, and it seems like it goes back a little further, so I'll probably follow that side of the pocket in. At least that's my thought for now. But just trying to hit some of the mouth of this. It jumps up pretty shallow here. It's 5.5 feet of water, and there's got to be a break line right out here somewhere, so I'm just trying to fish that just a little bit. See if we can catch a couple more. Alright, we are about as far back in a sort of a creek slash pocket. Ooh, almost lost that one. It was choked down his throat, but I didn't set the hook hard enough apparently. But just picked up another one, skinny but decent fish. But we are I mean, this is coming right to the end of a pocket. We did pick up another one. There was someone right nearby that I was chatting with on shore, the owner of the property that I was fishing in front of, and nice guy. But I didn't turn the video on because we were talking, and it would probably have seemed a little rude if I just went to ignoring him. But we've come all the way back here, and we did pick up another one. We missed one that was kind of bumping a bait, and then I saw another one that we didn't get. But we're pretty much at the end and turn around and we'll head back out. But kind of fun to come all the way back here and catch a fish on the buzzbait at 3:20 in the afternoon. It's hot, sunny, and just kind of fun to catch them. All right, just picked one up on the frog. There's all this grass that you can see, kind of a hump in the middle of a bay. and just caught one. You think he wanted that frog? Check that out. Oh my. I don't know if you can see all the salad that came with this fish. Fun to catch him on a frog. Absolutely buried down there. Alrighty. That is, I think it's the River to Sea Bullywah 2, the larger size, and I think that's in the Little Allen color, and it's a good frog, no question about it. I've caught a bunch of fish on it. All right, another frog fish. We've swapped frogs. It was a little thinner, so we went to the Gavacho and just picked off another one. I love fishing with a frog. I love fishing with a frog. Boy, this mat surprises me. I don't know. I've never, again, I haven't fished this lake for a couple of years, but I've never seen this thick a mat on this lake. So it's kind of neat to get to fish a lake, you know, with this kind of mat. Was unexpected with a frog, and it's almost time to go. So I will give an update, you know, probably, you know, either tonight or tomorrow, back in the garage. But I'm going to fish as long as I can. If we can catch some more fish, I'll keep you posted. But if not, I'll do an update video just telling you what we found today and how we caught them. And if I think about like maybe other things we could have tried, I'll try to share that as well. Maybe things we could have done better or we did really well. All right, let's try to catch a couple more. All right, guys, back in the boat here at the house, and giving you a little bit of a recap of the day. We caught fish on, let me just see, I'm going to count right here. I got them laid out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different, you know, baits. Not, you know, some of them are sort of in the same category, but 9 different baits the other day. And just kind of go over that real quickly, and what we did and what we learned. So started right out on a main lake point, trying to determine where those fish were at in the lake. I haven't fished that lake for a couple of years. I talked about that earlier in the video, but just trying to, you know, figure out what's going on. So started right out on the main lake point, and I you know, first thing in the morning, I love starting off with top water if I can. So we started out with a walking bait, just a stick bait. This is a Strike King bait. There are, you know, many other good ones. The River to Sea Rover is another really good one. I've caught a ton of fish on the Strike King, you know, bait, but walking bait, you know, but there are, I'm not saying there aren't many other good options, there are, but that's just one that I've used a fair amount. And, you know, someday we'll cover why I'm putting this red hook on here. That'll be a good video sometime. And it's a lot broader than just why I put a red hook on. It probably, you know, is a major determiner of how I fish for schooling fish as well when they're chasing bait. So that'll be a good video. I'll have to write that down so I don't forget it. And then, so we caught him on that first thing. We caught a smallmouth, lost one, swapped to the whopper plopper on the same point. And I usually start out deep. Again, I covered this earlier, but the smallmouth, sometimes the bigger ones seem to be off the point or off the island. And typically, this is just average. I'm not saying this is all the time, but average. You know, the largemouth tend to be more on, you know, the actual point, behind a rock, on a rock, relating really tightly to cover. Not always, but that's at least what I found in my area. And then we caught one on the whopper plopper and lost another one. Let's see. Then we fished a crankbait a ton. I love getting on a good crankbait bite. Some days it's there, some days it's not. And on this lake, it seems like more often than not, it's not. But I do get a crankbait bite every once in a while. Again, I haven't for years, but in the past I have. So I swapped to a crankbait, and I used a Strike King 5XD, 6XD, and then gosh, what was the other one? It's not really all that important. When I catch a fish on it, I'll show it. I'll show it to you. I didn't this trip, so there's no point in digging it out. But it's a fairly deep diving crankbait, 6 cents. It's a 6 cents deep diving crankbait, and I like the 6 cents quite a bit. But deep diving, and I tried, you know, I had them all laid out for different depths. That's why I went with all, you know, sort of 3 different diving crankbaits, just to target different areas. And I found some interesting stuff, and it helped me catch fish with a worm, but I didn't catch any on those type of crankbaits. I did catch some, and I'll go over that, but you know, I did catch one on a square bill. But so we cranked a whole bunch. And then, you know, I could not get them to react to it. So I started slowing down with a worm. And I do sort of a 2-stage. I'd crank, and then I'd go to a worm and see if, you know, if I couldn't catch them cranking, go to a worm, see if I could catch them with a worm. And I tried a couple different worms, and, you know, deeper. I went with a 3/8 ounce head, same kind of worm. And then shallower, I went with the 1/4 ounce. I love the 1/4 ounce head a lot. But when it's really deep, sometimes you're just waiting so long to get it to the bottom, and it's hard to keep it on the bottom. So I'll go up a little bit and wait. Started catching them on the worm, a whole bunch of them, and I used, you know, a few different colors of worms. This one seemed to be, you know, as good as any of them. So I sort of, you can see this worm has had it. I need to replace it, but it's just teeth marks everywhere. So that worm has been abused. I went through a few, obviously, but that one's been abused. I do need to replace it, but I thought I'd leave it on there and show it to you. And so caught quite a few on that, and it was an area where I had been cranking, and I found I was bouncing off rocks and immediately going into a weed line. And I thought, man, it's just too good. It's on an island hump, and we caught a few fish going around it. And then we got to one stretch, and it was rock with a weed line, and I found it cranking, and then I could see it in my 360 imaging, so I knew exactly what was going on. And so I started slowing down with the worm and immediately started catching fish, and I caught a few right in the exact same little spot, and then kept moving up and branching out and caught a whole bunch more. So we caught them on the worm. And then it kind of tapered off for a little bit, so I swapped to the Ned head and caught a whole bunch more, and some pretty good ones. The biggest one of the day came on that teeny little bait. And I really like this one. This is the Flanders Ned head. It's tungsten, and boy, it makes a huge difference. I was using the Z-Man head because it is the, you know, Elastec Z-Man, you know, Neds that I'm using, and I just started off with their head, and I like their head. It's not bad, but boy, when you go to tungsten, you can feel so much more. And even as you know, from this is a little 1/4 ounce lead head, and man, you put this tungsten one on, and you can feel so much more of what's going on. Every rock in it, and at first it throws you because you're like, ooh, that was a fish bite. I mean, it just feels like a thump, and it's just the head hitting the bottom, but you can feel so much more with it. So I caught a whole bunch more with that, and then I kind of would go back and forth with the, you know, the bigger worm. You know, it's not a big worm, it's the Zoom trick worm, like in the world's most common worm right there. I use that one a lot, all different colors, but I use that worm a lot. And we've covered this before, and that particular head. And I just kind of go back and forth and just kept catching fish in that spot. And then there was someone that just kept crowding us, and he crowded us, and then he left, and then he came back and kept crowding us again, and just, I mean, really close. I could have probably hit his boat with a cast. I said, okay, you know, it seemed like the fish bite was tapering off a little bit, and I probably could have stayed there and caught a few more, but that was okay. I moved on and just tried to catch some fish in other places. And I kind of want to explore the lake in places that I hadn't before. It's a lake I had fished before, but not for a long time. But there were just parts of the lake I've just never fished, and I thought, well, it would be good to just try different things out to try to, you know, build a pattern and make sense of the lake and what's going on. Then we went to another long tapering point. It got pretty windy, so it was hard to throw a worm. I would have thrown a worm, but it was very windy. So I started chucking the square bill crankbait, and it was just deep enough to occasionally nick a rock and rip up some weeds. The weeds were coming up, so you know, the square bill was the deal, and I did catch one on that. We didn't build some massive pattern out of it, but I mean, burning that bait as fast as I could go, and I did get a bite on that. We moved then to a real shallow sort of creek inlet, caught one on a swim jig, and again, this is a swim jig I've used some. It's the 6 cents swim jig. Again, I've covered this, but I like it a lot for certain features, the flat head, the screw lock keeper, but I don't particularly love the weed guard, and I don't particularly love the hook. I like the size, you know, how big it is, but it's not as strong as I would like it. And it's okay, but I typically, this is on fluorocarbon, but I typically like to fish it on braid, and it just isn't quite beefy enough for me, but I like it, you know, and I do fish it some. Then way back in the pocket, again, this is the hottest part of the day. Caught one on the buzz bait. I love catching fish on a buzz bait when it works. It is just a ton of fun, and I find that you can catch them. And again, if you're looking for all kinds of details on a buzzbait, I've done a buzzbait video. I was promising I'd do it. I finally did it. So you can look up, you know, a lot more information on a buzzbait if you want to. But I find sometimes the hottest part of the day, you might not catch as many fish with it, but you sometimes catch some pretty good ones. And it wasn't a giant this time, but you can catch some big ones on the buzzbait, and it is a ton of fun. And it seems like maybe when they're more reluctant to come get it, early spring, the hottest part of the day, it seems more important to be in less water, skinnier water, shallower water, so they don't have to go as far to come get it. And it seems like then your percentages go up quite a bit. You can throw it in a few feet of water and it's nothing for them. They're probably not on the very bottom anyway. So even if they're in 3 or 4 feet of water, maybe they only have to come 1.5 to 3 feet max to come get it. That's not far. I mean, they can cover that distance as fast as you can blink an eye. They are incredibly fast when they want to be. And then we got to a mat. I didn't know this mat existed before. I love fishing a frog. I get almost giddy about it. It's pathetic. I'm like a little child at Christmas. And this is a frog that I started with, river to sea, bullywah, might be bullywah too, bullywah, and it is the larger version. And this is the Little Allen color. Almost nobody makes a chartreuse, you know, frog, belly frog. I want the chartreuse on the belly. There's some that'll have it on the top. That doesn't do me a whole lot of good. What I want is it on the belly. I do like to keep my frog fishing extremely simple, and this is one of 3 or 4 colors. Probably 4 colors that I go with. But this is an awesome frog. It's not the best mat frog. It's better in sparse cover, and I find that it fishes differently. It does walk pretty well, but it walks, to me at least, it walks slow. So when I'm walking it, I can't, if I work it too fast, it just won't walk properly. And that's how I'm usually fishing a frog. On a mat, you have no choice. You just sort of have to pull it, and it kind of pulls, and maybe it turns a little bit, but mostly just pulls. But in open water, you can really walk this frog, and it has quite a bit of roll to it too. As you're walking it, it kind of rolls, which is nice. But I find I have to work it slower and give it time to totally back and forth. And you have, just like a jerkbait, you have to kind of give it the line back. So you're walking it like you would a spook, and you're just, you know, just with the rod tip, and I mean light, just working it light, and then you're giving that time as you're working it. You're not just pulling and reeling up the slack. You're walking it and giving it back, walking it and giving it back. Then maybe you take up some slack, and you do this all together, but walk, and just barely taking up slack, but you're always leaving that slack to go back at the frog, so it has the ability to turn. If you think about it, if the line is pulling really tight and you're trying to walk a frog, well, it's just going to kind of go and just keep pulling forward. If you never, you never give it, so if you never give it that slack line, it never has the ability to turn because it can't. It's pulling against your line. But if you hit it and then give it slack, it's going to take up that slack and turn. And then you hit it, it's going to turn and exaggerate it. You give it slack back and it's going to turn all the way to the side. Then you hit it, it turns, and you give it slack back. It's just going to keep walking back and forth. When you pull it and then give it slack, it'll turn. Pull it, give it slack, and it'll turn. So it's very important to give it that slack back. That's really key, especially with this one, more than even some of the other ones. I find that you sort of have to just a slow, methodical walk and make sure to give the slack back to it, where it will not perform. It doesn't look right. It doesn't work. And then the other one we swapped to a gavacho, and this is a popping frog. Again, not saying it's a mat frog, but it handles the mat okay. And even with the popper, not a thick mat. I'm not talking about some big, nasty, beefy cheese mat, but just a weed covering. It handles it okay still. This frog walks like you wouldn't believe. This is probably, in my mind, one of the easiest frogs in the world to walk. So if you're looking to start out, this is the gavacho, the jackal gavacho frog, popping frog, as you can see. But it has got to be the easiest frog in the world to walk. And I have become incredibly fond of this frog. And I don't work it like a popper 99.9% of the time. I just work it like a walking frog, and I will walk that frog, but I can walk this one a lot faster. You still have to give line back to it. You still have to, do everything we just talked about with the other one, but I can walk it a ton faster, and it just absolutely walks back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And these tails, I will sometimes, if I'm getting short strikes, I'll shorten these tails up just a little bit. But I can work this one a lot faster, and I really like it. And this is probably my favorite color of it. It's very natural. I like this one a lot. And we did catch one on that. It's a smaller frog, but still gets big bites. It's smaller hooks, but they're very strong. So all in all, I have not been disappointed with it. And you can even get smallmouth on it. I've caught a lot of smallmouth on this one because it is a little smaller, and I can throw it in open water if I want to. And around rocks, or not just cover, but it handles cover decently. It's not meant for that, but it handles it decently. And on a mat, I find that popping part of it kind of comes into play more than I use it anywhere else, because it's not going to walk on the mat, but it'll kind of spit a little extra water and create a little more commotion. So again, I'm not going to fish it on a big thick cheese mat. Don't misunderstand me, but I like it for just like if I had one frog to tie on and fish it everywhere, it would probably be that one. But I do like other frogs, and I will do a frog video for you guys. Talking specifics, the frogs that I use the most, and maybe even a few that I don't use much. Why, the colors, the rod, the line, the reel. I will do a frog video for you guys. But that one, we did catch fish on that, and that was the extent of the day. I probably, if I had known that mat was there, it's probably a good thing I didn't know that mat was there. I probably would have sat there most of the day and just frogged and flipped that mat and just kept, working. There was quite a bit more of it that we didn't cover, and I probably would have stayed there all day and just covered that over and over and over again and kept pulling fish out of it, because there were fish to be caught, and decent ones, and I'm sure there was a bigger one in there somewhere. But it was a fun day, terrific day. It seemed like most of the day, other than that mat, it was all about very, sort of finessey fishing. It was hard to get much of a reaction bite. Had to slow down and just really pick things apart and feel every rock with the worm, and just slowly, pick things apart. But it was a fun day exploring the lake. I don't think there's a whole lot that I would have done differently. If I had known about the mat, I probably wouldn't have left, which is it really is a good thing. Maybe if I was fishing a tournament or something, that would have been the place to park it and just, stay right there. But for exploring the lake, you want to try as much as you can to get a feel for the lake. So we know there were fish moving offshore. We know there were still some fish in the shallows. It seems like they're really coming into their summer pattern, and we're catching them in both places. There's fish everywhere, I guess, in some ways. But this lake, I did have to slow down overall and really finesse them to catch, most of the fish. I guess that's a wrap. All right, guys. Look forward to taking you out on the water here soon, and stay with it. Stay learning, and that's the name of the game.